Okay, let's get started with the Brandon City Council meeting of December 17th. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Christine.
Bastian. Here. Clark. Here. Fish. Here. Hausman.
Here.
Parsons.
Present.
Wakefield. Here. Mayor Lumberg.
Here. Okay, need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Need the minutes of November 29th, December 3rd, 7th, and 10th approved. The motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried to approve the minutes. Need to approve the bills and claims submitted with your agenda. With a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the bills and claims. Any discussion on those? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Need a motion to approve the consent calendar. One item, plat of Lot 4.
So
in-
moved.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, down to community input. Anybody that wishes to address the council may do so at this time. Nobody right now? Okay, very good. Item 7B, we need to conduct a public hearing to transfer the on and off sale liquor license from 212 Boiling Point from MDF Inc. to Kyle Thill.
You've got the packet in your agenda, or your packet in your packet.
Anybody from the public wishing to speak on that? Transfer?
Just to clarify, he wants it in his name personally, not in an LLC or corporation.
If that's on the application, that's who will have the license.
I'll make a motion that we transfer this from 212 to Kyle Thill.
He does have an LLC, it's KJT LLC.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the transfer of the liquor license. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Also, a public hearing for the first reading of ordinance 573, the plating fee payment and filing with the county required, pages 30 and 32. Need a motion to approve that.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the ordinance 573. Any further discussion or anybody from the public wishing to speak at that, on that issue? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 7C, the Water Conservation Committee presentation by Mr. Kevin Smith.
Thank you. Kevin Smith here representing the Water Conservation Committee. We've been very active over the last several months. As I think many of you on the council know, we've been meeting as a subcommittee previously of the Water Development Committee, and we're now a committee unto ourselves, and we're very appreciative of the Mayor and City Council approving a budget for what we're calling the Water Smarter Incentive Program for 2019, and it consists of a reimbursement program for certain devices, all aimed right now at reducing or managing outdoor water use in the summer. So there's 4 different items, and I thank you for putting the Water Smarter Incentive Program rebate application up on the screen. There's 4 separate items that we're looking at providing incentives, financial incentives to Brandon utility residents on. First is a weather-based irrigation controller, and that is an irrigation system or controller that reacts or responds to your plant needs, not just on a schedule of watering. So it uses evapotranspiration or how much moisture is in the ground, and I'd say that's kind of the next generation of irrigation sensors, irrigation timers. Those systems are a little more of an investment, so that item will have up to a rebate of up to $100 towards the price of purchase and installation of the system. Next item under the program is a rain sensor, and that can be affixed to, I think, pretty much any irrigation system that's been installed in the last several years. That's kind of an add-on item that I would really encourage residents to use if you don't have one, especially after as rainy as the last summer was. So the way the way rain sensors work is they have a mechanism in them, and this affixes to your eaves. It rains up to 1/4 of an inch. The irrigation sensor overrides your irrigation system and keeps the sprinklers from going off in the rain. And I think we've all driven by properties where you ask yourself, well, why would they let their irrigation system go in the rain? Well, because it was set on a pre-timed schedule and no one's there to turn it off. So this will help our citizens, help us conserve water. The third item is an irrigation rain sensor, or a programmable irrigation timer. And this is really for those older irrigation systems that were that the irrigation timer was based on days of the week or certain number of days and may not have been able to be programmed on the odd-even system that we have in place today. So if you have an irrigation system and last summer you found out or you struggled with how to make it work under the system that we have, odd-even, this is an opportunity to replace that old irrigation timer with a new one that will be able to use the odd-even system. And the rebate for that would be up to $75 towards the purchase and installation. And I think the final one, and maybe a favorite of the Water Conservation Committee, is a $50 rebate to buy and implement a rain barrel. And I would say that of all of these devices, maybe this isn't going to save the most water on any given day, but if one of our goals is to really promote water conservation with our residents and with our citizens, I think just the fact that we have the opportunity for citizens to purchase a rain barrel and do their part, right? And maybe it's just to use the water to take care of their garden or take care of their flower beds. I think it is in the spirit of water conservation to provide funding for rain barrels. And we've got some really fun things coming up regarding public education, the public education side of what a painted rain barrel looks like. And we're already planning for the Loyalty Day Parade in May. So we've got the incentive program with these 4 different devices or 4 different opportunities. And I think this crosses a wide spectrum of residents in Brandon, so that if you don't have a irrigation system and say, geez, I'm not eligible for a couple of these things, or why would I do this? Well, there's the rain barrel. So we just encourage people to take part in the program, take the opportunity to get some cash back for some much needed devices. I would say also that this is not retroactive, so these, as things become available or as the funding becomes available, this is for purchases people make in 2019. So we can't really provide funding for things that were purchased a year ago, but this is really looking forward and those investments. So if you're thinking about replacing any of these things or buying an irrigation system, keep your receipts, include the receipt with your application. And we hope that we're able to see a large number of devices that get the rebates back. Also, it may take up to 30, 60, 90 days to provide, whether it's a credit back to your utility account or a check, and we're still working that out with city staff. So there's more work to be done, but I think just speaking on behalf of the rest of the Conservation Committee, we're pretty excited about 2019. And again, our goal over the last several months has been to address outdoor water use and what we're going to do about it in 2019. So 2018 was really a year of education and kind of learning, and we're hoping that 2019 is a year where our citizens can be actively engaged and involved in some of our activities. So I believe we also have an ordinance for first reading tonight, making rain sensors mandatory on any new installations of irrigation systems, and a small request of, I think, $70 to purchase candy for the Loyalty Day Parade in the spring as well.
Questions for Kevin?
Thanks.
Okay, Brian, do I need a motion on the, I suspect they do it in the rebate? Motion for that, the four prongs rebate?
I think it might be better to do a resolution than the motion, so we can have the resolution in there. It's not required, but I think it's something that oftentimes we set fines by resolution, and we go back and then update those, and it's a lot easier just to keep track of what you're getting by the resolution for the fine amount or rebate amount. So it's just a suggestion. You can do either.
Need staff to write a resolution then, so that can be ready for next meeting? Okay. With that, I'll withdraw my motion and delay it until next meeting.
First reading of ordinance number 576, the rain sensor ordinance. Questions, comments? Second to approve the first reading of ordinance 576. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Suspect I need a motion to spend $70 for candy. I'll throw my wallet out. Very good. Thanks for all your work. Next on the agenda is to approve a contract for the Golf Pro for 2019.
I'd like to go ahead and delay this till January. I just met with Brian today and had a few suggestions for him, and he needs to visit with staff a little bit.
Problem with that? Okay, how about the contract for the events center coordinator? Same. Done. Police report is in your agenda. Same with the inspection department report. Anything else on that? How about the Parks and Recs committee? Book report for your review, and then it's skid loader bid. For us to approve tonight. Correct. Motion to approve the bid
From Titan Machinery for a case SR 210 skid loader for $39,535.22.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Discussion on that approval.
So I want to thank the team from the Parks Department for taking the time to look into the different pieces of equipment. A lot of times when it comes to equipment like this, there's a lot of things that you have to look into and not necessarily the best price. It's more about best value. And in this case, having talked to the team, a big reason why we're choosing this skid loader is because of the visibility. It makes it a lot easier for the guys to see. So I really want to tell you guys thank you for keeping in mind safety when you're looking at equipment. It's really important for us as a community.
Anything else? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a report from MedStar. Request for funding.
Chief Mazer?
MedStar is here. Address the council.
Okay. Hello there. Brian, did you hand the paperwork to everybody? They all have this? Okay. Yep, that'd be great. What Brian's handing out for you right now is, I'll explain it to you when you all have it on the front page there. But before I get started with this, I want to give you kind of an update of what MedStar is doing and we have been doing for the city since 2007. As of today, we have critical care paramedics working for us. We actually have emergency room nurses from the hospitals working and flight team members from both the Varon and the Sanford teams that work on our team here with MedStar. We're doing a lot of our transports now, transfers with critical care nurses from point A to point B. So we've achieved quite a bit since we opened up in 2007. We have 7 critical care ambulances. We can handle the ventilators and things that many ambulance services can't provide. So that's number one. Number two, we've got this great working relationship with the police department and fire department. I know a lot of the fire guys are here, but I think they're here for a different reason tonight, if I'm not mistaken. But the fire department was getting a burnout rate. They were going on medical calls, they were going on the silly type calls, but they were going on all of these different calls that they didn't really have to go on because their professional services weren't really necessary. So what we've done with the fire department is they go on the red lights and siren calls basically, and they don't go to the nursing homes and that type of thing because we've already got help there. So that's what we're trying to do by providing those types of different services with the fire department, and they're always willing to come if we call. But what we're trying to do is retention with the fire department too. They're all volunteers and they volunteer their time. And so, getting up 5-6 times a day sometimes to go on medical calls and things was really unnecessary, except for the life-threatening ones. So, and with the police department, we have a fantastic police department that works well with us. We work well with them. These cardiac arrests we go on, the police department's there within sometimes seconds, not minutes, and we follow by with just a few minutes. And if somebody in Brandon has an event that there's a strong possibility that we can make a difference, the difference is made. And that's because of a strong time response from the police department, from the fire department, from the ambulance service. So Brandon is one of the few communities that I know of, and I'm all over the country, one of the few communities that has such an outstanding EMS service for such a small city, small area. So having said that, I got my daughter Brenly back there. She's the basketball player. I picked her up from practice to come out and kind of listen. I want to talk to you a little bit about the finances of running an ambulance service. And I've talked to you about this a little bit before too. Ambulance services in the 911 historically don't make money on the 911 system. Now in Sioux Falls they do. They do make money on 911. I bid on that service. But you also have to remember they're doing 17,000 calls. We're doing 600. And out of the 600 calls that we go on, we transport maybe 400 of those. And out of those 400 calls that we transport, our average payment is between 20 and 25% of our billed amount. Now, 911 is one of those necessary evils. Believe it or not, it's not a necessary service. You don't have to fund it. You don't even have to have one in your city. You don't have to have one in your county. It's not an essential service like the police department is. And while I'm at it, fire department's not an essential service either. So you can say goodbye to both of us, and you can't get in trouble for that, just so you know. I've learned a lot. I've been in these meetings with Minnehaha County, with all the ambulance services, and we're trying to work together to figure out how we're going to keep this system strong. And we've come up with some ideas. Now, I want to go through this little financial summary with you. Now, out of all fairness, there's another 10, 12 pages that go in between this. But what you'd have seen is all these black marks. Those black marks are all my private business, things that have nothing to do with 911. But on the front page, our total charges through October 31st were $429,238. That was our total charges through the 31st. Our payments from that was $180,775. Our write-off in that amount was $141,532. And you're going to notice that there's a discrepancy between the two bottom numbers. They don't equal the top number. Well, that discrepancy is the AR. It's monies that are waiting to find out what you're going to get. But you can look at that and say, well, 23% of that's going to get paid, of that difference. Now, if you go to the back sheet, you can see that MedStar, total charges for all of my business with MedStar, this is all my hospital business, has nothing to do with Brandon, is $1,717,987.93 through October 31st. Total payments of $602,919. Total adjustments, which means you're not getting paid for it, is $728,229.90. The difference again between those two is the AR that's waiting to be paid for, waiting to find out, what's going to happen with those monies. I could have brought you actual numbers, but I chose not to, what it costs to run an advanced life support paramedic ambulance service. But if you go online, if you go to any reputable site, you'll find it costs about $100 an hour to have a full-fledged paramedic service that's able to respond within seconds. $100 an hour. Out of that money, our normal wage, now forget about work comp and everything, but the normal wage is between $20 and $25 an hour for a paramedic. That's 24/7. The wages for the EMTs anywhere from $13 to $16 an hour. That's just for two people in one ambulance. So the dedication my wife and I have had providing this service has absolutely been, I'm a stupid businessman if you look at my numbers. Anybody up here that has financial sense says, why would anybody do that? Because it's been my whole life. It's what I've done. And I've been willing to give up everything to make sure that we had a good service wherever I've been. And we've done that. We've proven ourselves. Out of fairness, I went to the county. And when it was time to put our bid in for the county ambulance service, in there I wanted the same $50,000 every other ambulance service was getting. The county didn't even entertain it, didn't look at it. They lumped it over here with for-profit companies and didn't consider it. If anybody at the county or the city here can look at my paperwork and say I'm a for-profit company and I actually make money, I would listen to anybody that has something to say. Just a couple days ago, Midwest Medical, they used to have an ambulance service in T, and all they were doing was transfers. That was it. They weren't doing any 911. Well, the hospitals didn't really support them, so they finally figured it out about a year later and left. Well, they have an ambulance service in Des Moines, Iowa, and it was a 911 service. And after the first year of doing their 911 there, they bought out another service as they wanted to buy my service out, and I wouldn't sell to them, which is why they moved there. What they told me what they did is they found out what the break-even point was at the end of the year, and that's what they would bill you for. Well, here that'd be $400,000 and some thousand. Well, there in Iowa, and there's public information, you can look at it, it was $130,000 or something was a break-even point. Well, they went and asked for $260,000 because they said they have a right to make a profit as a private business. The reason I'm telling you this is my wife and I have never, ever thought that we want to make a profit off the 911 system. Ever. We've always subsidized it ourselves. And if I was to ask you for full payment of 911, I wouldn't ask for the additional money over and above as they did there. And by the way, the answer was no, and they got up and just left. They left their community. We would never do that. So I know last time we talked, there was some issue about funding a for-profit company. And I am for-profit. I'm just waiting to make that profit on 911, and it's not coming anytime soon. My original asking price was $130,000 to pay my insurance, because that's what my insurance cost me a year. And I lowered that to 50, and I'll tell you why I lowered it to 50. Because the city of Brandon is responsible for probably the majority of what we do. But the county is also responsible for what we do. And when I finish here, I'm going back to the county. And I'm going to talk to them and have them realize that these services aren't free. We just had a horrible accident right off the interstate just a few days ago. Well, we were there within seconds. And if there could have been a difference made, we'd have made it. Now, if you had to wait for a crew to come out of Sioux Falls, we all know how that used to play out. And I fought 7 years to make this happen. So, in a nutshell, I'm not here begging, I'm not graveling for anything. I'll be in business as long as I can be, with or without your help. But I'm telling you that probably won't be as long as you'd like or me to like if I don't get some help financially from the people we serve. We're dealing with all the other townships that we presently serve. We've got commitments from some of the townships where they're going to pay us the same thing they're paying the other ambulance services. We're working with Valley Springs and Coleman and those places there. And what we're trying to do is we're getting up to that point to where we'll be here forever. And that's about that point that I told you about, and that's the funds that we're looking for. And Brian, I suppose he could speak for me when I first walked in and said, Brian, I need $130,000. And he says, well, can you put your pencil to the paper a little bit? And so I did. And I did what I thought was absolutely fair. You got to remember, every second for a time response costs money. It ain't free. Every single second that you have to staff somebody to go someplace or not go someplace, they're still at the station ready to go someplace, and at all costs. So I would ask that my city of Brandon, who I have been loyal to every single second I've been here, and my family's been loyal to, I'm asking that everybody in the city of Brandon, it's not your money, it's the taxpayers' money, I get it. I'm asking the taxpayers to help us take the edge off. That's it. Just take the edge off. So I'll answer any questions you have, or I'll sit down and let you think about things.
So Jay, if you have a 911 call, if you don't transport to the hospital, can you still bill? Tell me that process. How does that work?
Sure. I'll give you the whole process from start to end. So we'll take your scenario. We get called to a house, say it's an infant that's choking, and basically choking on a bottle. It's a new mom, whatever. They get excited, they call for an ambulance. And so we go lights and sirens, get to the house. We go in there and we assess. And we use all the tools we have and we assess. If they truly don't need to go to the hospital, we're not going to demand that they go to the hospital. In fact, we can't tell them not to, but we also can kind of tell them what they got to do. The answer to your question is we cannot get reimbursed for that call by anybody, insurances or nothing. The only time we can be reimbursed for a call is if we get on scene and, for example, it's a full cardiac arrest. Somebody is pulseless and that type of thing. Well, we work them on scene for 20, 25 minutes. We call the hospital, and we tell the doc what's going on. We've done the same things they're going to do in the emergency room for that first half an hour. And we ask the doctor if we can call it on scene. And the reason we do that is twofold. The first one is, and I know it's not about money. It is not about money, but there's no reason to have a family pay a huge emergency room bill and everything else when everything had been done at the house. So we talk to the doctor who's on the line. Those types of things we can recoup if they have insurance. We can recoup just the fee to get there. And if you look at the numbers, historically, it's about 67% of the people that you see on this list. Now, the numbers that you saw on the front, that does not include the ones that we didn't transport. These numbers are not my numbers. They're numbers from PCC. It's our billing company we hire out. We pay somebody to do our billing and to keep these books for us. So these are 100% our charts, but it's 100% their numbers that they printed off, gave to me, I'm bringing to you. And I would welcome anybody to call them if they so choose. But But to answer your question, there's, it's about 23 to 24% reimbursement if you put all 911 together. Not including the non-transports, because they're not included in here.
Jay, just want to say thank you for providing 911 services to Brandon. I've got a series of questions I'm going to ask since I'm from the medical background. Sure. Can you take me through just a typical day from the moment that Metro Communications gets that phone call until you're en route? And then when we talk about response times, what are your response times that you've noticed in the 750 plus calls you did last year? And out of those 750 calls, how many of those resulted in a transfer to the hospital to start with? That would be the number one question.
Sure. Well, your last question is about 67% that will transport, about 67%. And that's right along the national averages. And your first question again?
Take me through, once someone makes a 911 call, if you can just kind of give me an idea how that process works. How do you get notified? What's the response time just from that notification till the wheels are turning to go towards whatever address that you've been provided with?
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. So for example, right now if the tones go off and I'm on call, I shut my speaker off and I go out to the ambulance and I leave rudely. So kind of a rude thing to do right here, but that's the way it would work. If a call came in right now, we have a paramedic and an EMT or 2 paramedics at the station right now that within 10 seconds will answer Metro. Metro will copy the call. And after we copy the call, as soon as they get in the truck, start it, and as soon as the wheels start going outside the garage, they'll say, Metro, we're en route. Once we get to the scene, we'll call on scene. Once we get to the patient, we'll normally call at patient side. And if the fire department gets there, they'll do the same thing on the patient deal. And then they'll give an update on the patient if we're not quite there yet. But it's basically, we have 90 seconds to answer. And then we have 3 minutes to be en route. That's what we have. Normally we answer within seconds and we're en route very shortly after we answer. Our average response times from the time of the call to the time we're on scene in Brandon is 3.5 to 4 minutes. That's our average response times. During the day, we have 3 paramedic level ambulances at MedStar ready to go. At night, we staff 1. If that one goes out, we bring another one in. If that one goes out, we bring another one in. And so every single call that we take until we run out of ambulances, we're paying to have somebody come in and again sit and wait for another call. And we didn't have to do that with our old contract. It was 1 ambulance, that was it. That's all we had to provide. We've never ever done just the basics, just the minimums. And nor would I in this field. If I have to do that, then I'll go sack groceries again.
Can you remind us too your business model for because you had talked about earlier that you have a separate entity, so to speak, that does patient transfers. So can you kind of help us understand the two? Are they under one umbrella or one company, or is it 2 totally separate entities?
Again, it's a great question. I'm glad you're asking these. So MedStar Ambulance, we were in Brandon for 7 years. And those 7 years, it was the same MedStar Ambulance as it is today that we took the 911 system over. So the transfer side of our company is the same ambulance as the 911 side of our company, but the transfer side of the company is the revenue generator. That's the one that allows us to go out and basically do what we've been doing here in Brandon since we've opened. But we also, because we were just still coming up short, we opened up a wheelchair service. And it's called MedStar Transit. And what MedStar Transit is we go to the hospitals. We basically, we gear towards the hospitals. We pick people up that can't necessarily go by ambulance but need to go back home to a nursing home or whatnot. We take them from Sanford, McKinnon, or any place out or any place in and drive them back or forth. And that has been another revenue source for our 911 system. So, we've been doing all we can to come up with innovative ways to be able to fund this without asking for help. But again, it's to the point to where we do need a little bit of help. The selfish part of me says, I want my kids to go to college too. So, as it is a business that I own, I also have to look, a little bit past what I've always looked my whole life, and that is, I've got to look at my family also. If it was just me, I could live under a bridge. I've done that before, but I think the service we have provided, we have proven ourselves. We've proven we're worthy. I've showed you my numbers, and Brandon's my town. I love it. Now, if you decide to give us the standby fee, and I don't call it a subsidy, because a subsidy is just something that you're giving to us for some reason. Well, no different than your garbage service. I call this a standby fee. The city's going to pay a standby fee. The county pays a standby fee. The township's a standby fee. We don't consider it a subsidy. So that in a nutshell is what I have for you, unless you have some more questions or something I can answer.
So just in regards to the dollar amount that you're trying to achieve, is it, have you come up with that figure, and that figure is what again? Total dollar amount. I'm not talking what you're asking, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Not what you're asking specifically from the city of Brandon, but the total dollar amount that you're hoping to get or would feel like that's a win for you would be how much again?
Well, and I wouldn't even look at it as a win. A win would be about $300,000. But my total dollar amount that we were looking for is about $135,000.
Okay.
Yep.
And then out of that 135,000, we've talked about, getting a standby fee from other agencies, whether it be another community or another township. Currently, you have negotiations with other communities or townships. Can you tell me currently, do you have those communities that have actually decided that they're going to partner with you on that standby fee? And if so, what are those dollar amounts, and what counties or cities have you had that communication with, and just in terms of what they've set aside for you?
You know, it's a fair question, and it's a question I feel that first off, we haven't codified anything, and so I don't think it's something that I can answer without making sure that whoever it is that's going to be funding us codifies it and tells us we can talk about it. Having said that, you know what I've been dealing with the last couple of years is, well, why aren't they doing it? If they're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. And why aren't they doing it? If they're not going to do it, we're not going to do it either. Somebody has to step up to the plate, and somebody has to start this process. Because, you know, this process was started by me in 2007 because of my passion. It has continued through 2019 or 18 because of my passion. My passion can't pay all the bills anymore. Somebody has to step up to the plate, and I'm hoping it's my hometown. I'm hoping it's the people that I have proven myself to time and time and time again. Because once you do it, it's a lot easier for me to walk up and say, guys, either pony up or we're just going to make it a lot stronger right where we're at. Because, you know, things aren't free in this world. And they're not free just because somebody happens to be a nice guy. Yeah, there's a point to where we're providing a taxpayer service as a private enterprise. That's what we're doing. And if I was in Sioux Falls, as I told Brian back when I bid on the ambulance service in Sioux Falls, I said, if I get that service in Sioux Falls, make all that extra income, I'll never ask you for anything. Because I'll have enough money from Sioux Falls to subsidize all my other stuff I've been doing forever. And I would. That's who I am. The point is I didn't get it in Sioux Falls. And that company is doing okay, and I'm proud of them. I mean, that's what business is all about. Here in Brandon, and I invite you to look around the country. I invite you to look around at other cities our size and so forth. And you'll find that a good share of them are going to be volunteer EMT services. That's what you're going to find. You're going to find that the paramedic level services are much harder to find. It wasn't just 3, 4, 5 years ago I was paying $12 to $13 for a paramedic. My reimbursements, I promise you, have not doubled. In fact, some of them have gone down. And I went from that $12 to $13, $14 an hour up to $20 to $25 an hour just for retention to keep people working here, because wages have gone up everywhere. And if you want good people, you got to pay for them. And so, you know, and I wish I didn't have to stand here, honestly, and even talk to you about it. I do. I wish I didn't have to. But again, I think it's a vital service, and I think it's a very, very small price for a community of 10,000 to pay. If you look at what it costs each and every person that lives here to be guaranteed an ambulance within 3 to 4 or 5 minutes, I think it's a very small price to pay. Sioux Falls is paying a lot more than that.
So you talk about going out to other communities or townships and so forth. What percentage would you say is Brandon of that? So like call-wise, you said about 600 calls in Brandon. What percentage of the overall community that you serve, what percentage is Brandon?
Oh, Brandon's got to be in the upwards of 65%, 70% of the calls, of the call volume. And I didn't come up with those actual figures,
Sure.
but
Okay.
it's obviously the most because it's the most
Right.
densely populated.
Yep. And then I want to talk about something that you kind of had talked about as well, and that's retention in fire department. So many people probably don't know, but I was a volunteer fireman down in Harrisburg. And I have to tell you that it was absolutely horrible being down there without having proper ambulance service. It was a challenge. We had everything we could do to service and wait for ambulances to come out of Sioux Falls. What we have in Brandon is absolutely wonderful. I would get called out at 2 in the morning for grandma that needed a ride to the hospital, and that's something that MedStar would have been able to do on their own had we had a MedStar or similar service in Harrisburg. So I can definitely see how your service is removing some burden from our fire department. And I think that's key when you look at the overall call volume that you have, plus what the fire department has, and all that burden. It's huge, especially on volunteers. The other piece that I want to make sure everyone understands is we're not only getting an EMT, we're not just getting a driver, we're getting paramedics. And that's not necessarily the case in communities our size. I was a volunteer fireman in Elkton, and we had a volunteer ambulance service, and we didn't necessarily have an EMT. There was many times that we'd be driving lights and sirens towards Brookings, hoping that the patient would make it. We were hoping that Brookings ambulance with their paramedic would intercept us and hop in our ambulance and finish the ride, because there's things that you can't do as an EMT. And I know that based on the service that you're able to provide by having the paramedics, lives have been saved. I guess when I look at the overall percentages, I'm a numbers guy. Your total need is 135,000. Brandon's 65% of that burden. The 50,000 isn't adding up. To me, I think that number is higher. I truly do, and that's one of the things that you have to look at is as a community, even with the townships that surround us, working together is key. Getting started, I understand, but as we look forward to, keeping our insurances in check and those sorts of things, it's really key to keep that response time down. If an ambulance is coming from Sioux Falls, that response time would probably be 20 minutes, is my guess, not 3. I know I was on fire calls in Harrisburg that was 45 minutes. And I know that cost the lives of family members that were there. I get it, but that's just what we have to remember is that's part of it. So, I think it's key. I think it's prudent for the city not to get in the ambulance business. It's not something I'm interested in. We don't want to compete. I don't think the fire department's very interested in running an ambulance. If they are, we can talk about that, but that's a significant endeavor, and it takes a lot, especially the staffing side, to be able to staff that. It's getting harder and harder for volunteers to leave work to go on fire calls. Today's society has changed so much. 10 years ago, you just left work and your employer was good with it. Nowadays, you're begging your boss to let you go. So overall, the coverage, I think, is the key here. That 3 to 4 minute average response time is absolutely wonderful. So thank you for doing what you do, and please continue to hang in there as we make some decisions.
Just some other questions so people have a better understanding of things. Who is your medical director?
Dr. Kevin Vasca, he's a cardiologist.
And in regards to the, we all want positive patient outcomes. What systems do you have in place for quality assurance processes to improve those patient outcomes that you currently use? And what have you learned by some of those things when you've looked at them, if you have those in place?
We do have those in place, and obviously I don't have the numbers in front of me and things we can get you, but our system is we run with the same system that most ambulance services run with. It's a state, and for some reason just space, but it's a state system that we do our charting on. And in the charting, all the information from that call goes into that chart, in which the hospitals get. We have our own internal review, and we have our review with our medical director on each chart that comes through. And we can do that because we're a small enough company to do that. As far as, how do we better ourselves and so forth, and I think that's a great question. Fortunately, a lot of our people are already working for the helicopter services, the airplane services, and or another service. So they've got that other experience coming from them. But Dr. Luther, Dr. Luther, Jeff Luther, he's also a medical director for the county, and we lean on him when we have issues and questions about the way a call has gone. Now, this is a new development this year, and it's probably one of the better developments in the county. Not all county ambulances obviously are paramedic staffed all the time, and they never used to quantify or qualify ALS charts. But starting the first of the year, Dr. Luther is going to, in the county as we do in the city, review all of our ALS charts and be part of that system also. So that doctor at the hospital, if he has an issue with something that we've done, he would call us or he'd call Dr. Vasca and start the system there. There's also the Medical Board of Osteopathic Examiners. So that's pretty much the last step if you can't get things resolved, is that's a board of doctors that takes care of any major issues that ever get to that point. We've never had to go to that extent. But so there's an extensive process as far as that goes. Now, if you recall, back in 2007, none of you were on the commission at that point, commission council, and they hired Dr. Jacobus, an outside expert, to review our charts for the first 3 or 4 years. And Dr. Jacobus was not affiliated with MedStar. He was affiliated with your city because you paid him to do it. And every single time he came in, we had the best response times in the country, if you go back and look at the documentation he gave you. And our care is among the best in the country. And he rated us as excellence of service. And he did that 2 or 3 years in a row, and then you guys quit paying for him because you said you were wasting your money. So, and we were okay if you kept him. We were okay if you didn't keep him, because the point is, what makes you good isn't somebody that's over the top of you looking down at you. What makes you good is when you're in the bottom looking up, making sure you can be the best you can be. And that's what we do all the time.
How about customer service type things, and then what do you do for the community? Like what kind of educational opportunities have you done for the community that people can participate in that would be, that their medical knowledge would be enhanced, that might be BLS type people that could be on the scene in the event that they would be the first person to respond?
What did you do for a living? Some of these are pretty good questions. And I'm glad you're asking them. So we have trained the Sioux Falls Police Department, first aid and CPR, AED. We do training with the fire department. We do training with the outside fire departments also. The one thing I did forget to mention is that some of the training the city has paid for it in the past, as far as like your lifeguards and things like that. We would train them, and the city would pay us to train them. We're looking now at, with the city becoming a partner, and I call it a partner of ours because you'll financially be part of our system, is that we wouldn't charge anymore for teaching your police department or the fire department or the school systems or whatever it is here in the city of Brandon. That'll be part of what we do. It'll just be part of who we are. The reason we had to start charging was obvious because, our funding, we need to fund ourselves somehow. But we are a part of this community. We're going to continue to be, and looking forward to still working with the police department. And by training the police department and having training with the fire department, it also lets our people commingle together, get to know some people. I'm such a likable guy. Everybody likes me, but some people aren't that way. And so it's good to get to know them. But, so yeah, being part of the community, and that's what you're getting at. Are you part of the community? You're doing things in the community. We'll stand by your wrestling events and football events, and we'll walk through your basketball games. We'll, time depending. If we do that stuff, they don't hire us to sit there. Of course, we got to leave, we get a call or whatnot, but we like to be part of the community and do community events.
Couple other things, so I apologize, I do. I think this is really important for the community to understand this. So I had a chance to review the Minnehaha County Emergency Services study that was done in late 2016. I understand that you chose not to participate in that study. Was there a reason for that?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
a strong reason. The folks that were putting that study together, it was J. Fitch and Company. And J. Fitch and Company were the same folks that went into Sioux Falls and were the oversight for their process. And J. Fitch and Company and MedStar, it's not a good fit. You know, it's a size 10 shoe on a size 2 foot. And so I told them they couldn't look at our books. They couldn't look at the things we have because I frankly didn't trust them. And but after they did their research and did everything they had to do, this group I've been associated with for the last year, this Ambulance Association, we met and they wanted us to follow through with the J. Fitch study. So the first couple times we met, it wasn't fun. There was a lot of things that got put on the table. But 2 months later, Fitch or no Fitch, we all got together and we got cohesive and we work together now. And should I have participated in the study? If they were to ask me to do it today again with J. Fitch, the answer would be no. I said if they did it with anybody else, I would participate. I wouldn't participate with J. Fitch. He was the same guy back in the 80s I had issues with. So, I mean, we had a long history. That's why.
Okay. And just to be clear, I have not communicated with you as of any time in the past regarding these things, correct? I mean, these are things that you're hearing from the first time, is that correct? From my questions?
Yes,
Okay.
first time I've
So I really have no bias here this evening. My medical history I'm a physician assistant. I work in neurosurgery at Avera. I've been doing that for 26 years in some capacity. I really feel passionate about response times, EMS services, and the safety of our citizens. I do want to read 3 things that come out of this study. And again, I have no bias. I am not even sure where I stand on a response or a subsidy or on-call payment for any ambulance service, whether it's yours or any other for-profit or not-for-profit entity. But I do think it's very important that the citizens hear these 3 things that I read out of this. Number 1, it says the study based on publicly available information showed that MedStar is a strong asset to the area it serves. I think that's something that you need to know. Also on page 24, it's referring to the metrics that's presented to Del Rapids, Garrison, Humboldt, MedStar. It says staffing each ambulance service 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without receiving funding through taxes or subsidy is impossible, leaving the agencies to depend heavily on local, dedicated volunteer providers. And last, I want to remind you that as we get older, because I'm 50, there's going to be more and more demands on our EMS systems, and so I think we need to think about that as we move forward. So I thank you for allowing me to answer the questions, or ask the questions. I apologize to the audience. It's not something I want to sit here any more than anyone else, but I do think this is a hot topic, and I think the citizens of Brandon deserve to be educated on this well beyond just some of the simple questions that have been asked tonight. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So what's the process if we would want to move forward with something? Is that something that we talk through a negotiation process, or how do we move forward from here, Brian?
I think at this point in time, council should authorize staff and legal counsel to draft an agreement with MedStar for the standby payment. And then we can present that to you at the next council meeting.
And then we can discuss that value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would make a motion that we authorize staff to move forward with drafting a agreement for standby services provided by MedStar.
I would second that.
Motion and a second to authorize the administration to draw up some paperwork with a standby fee system for MedStar. All those in favor?
I have a question.
Or, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hey Jay, thank you so much for coming back again tonight, standing up there and answering all these questions. Brett blew my mind. I was like, wow, that was really cool. But thank you for all you do too, because I know I live close to where your ambulance place is, and you guys are always zooming by and going to all these calls. So 600 calls, that's average per year, or that's what you've had so far this year?
The documents that you have in front of you shows 300 calls from the end of October.
Yeah, you told us 600 calls, you transport 400, so.
Yeah, but towards the end of the year. We'll do
Okay.
between, anywhere from 595 to 695.
All right.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that. Also, is a 50,000 a one-time fee or every year fee?
It'd be a yearly fee.
Yearly fee. This time of year, every year? Or
Yes.
during budget time? Okay. All right, that's what I need clarification. Okay, thanks.
Any other
So
questions?
Mayor, on our motion, we're not committing any dollar amount.
No.
We're just writing up legal counsel, or legal.
That is correct.
One really simple question compared to Brett's. So demographically, how far do you go out for the 911, not the transport, but the 911? What is that geographical outreach?
And that's a great question, too. First off, we'll go anywhere if we're mutual aided. But every other ambulance service will, too. So there's no boundaries for mutual aid. Having said that, our boundaries go to the Minnesota border. It's like a half-mile past. And then to the Iowa border. And in fact, we're going to be approaching the casino down there also for a little bit of help, because we do also provide them ALS service there. And then it's 2 miles past I-90, or I-29, excuse me. And then up, I'm trying to think if it's the 87, 88 mile marker. And then it kind of does this number around Del Rapids and Garrettson and works its way back here.
Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Christina, call the roll, please.
Ashton.
Aye.
Clark. Aye. Fish. Aye. Hausman.
Aye.
Parsons.
Nay.
Wakefield.
Aye. Motion would pass 5-1.
Thank you,
Mr.
guys.
Major.
I appreciate you very much. Great questions.
Very good. Item 12B is social media policy. Anything more on that?
I haven't had any time to get to it yet.
Item 12C, meeting posting policy.
I asked for this to be put on the agenda. I'd like to see us move forward with having a policy that directs our staff on the rules of engagement on a few items, one of which is when they should post on the calendar for events. Prime example is we've had a few events here that we did have agendas for, and it did not show up on the calendar. So having the agendas, they're buried a few pages deep on the website, and they're not really visible. So there's some concern from the residents that we're not being as transparent as they'd like us to see, because they're not seeing that the items are coming up. Another prime example is council packets. Right now, we have started receiving the council packets prior to the Thursday meeting, but the residents are not getting that at this time ahead of the meeting, so they're not able to look at the council packet prior to the meeting unless they do come into the city office. So right now, I'm going on to the city website for tonight's meeting. As of this exact moment, the council packet is not posted for this meeting, so there was no way for anyone to review that council packet prior to the meeting today. That's a concern to me. This is valuable information that our residents look at, and they need to be able to communicate with us and be able to have public comment. So in the case that there was any kind of concern with a claim or any item on this potential agenda, the residents don't have that ability to see those council packets. So my request is that we would put forth, whether it's a policy or something in the employee handbook, but something that we can use as a council to ensure that we're being open and transparent, so that the information is being disseminated to our residents, and that we can hold our staff to that level that we want to ensure that we're meeting those expectations.
Christina or Brian, what does the state law require? Yeah.
In terms of what is required for notices, there's 2 notices that we're required to follow. One would be posting in a visible place at the principal office. So we have to post notice of the meeting with proposed agenda, and we do so on our building. That's one. The second is state law requires if you have a website, it has to be on the website. There's no specification in state law that directs the public entity where within the website you need to post. It doesn't say it has to be on the first page, doesn't give you any direction. It just says if you have a website, you need to put the notice and the agenda on the website. So that's what's required by state law. And I don't recall that there's any requirement that the entity post on the website the packet before the meeting. And what we do, you do have to have one available to the public, and what we do is we have one in the back room. So we are meeting it. It doesn't mean you can't exceed it. It just, that's what is required. So we're meeting the requirements, and whether or not the council wants to adopt something else, they certainly can. I know that I drafted some policies after you asked, and I think we're adding to them, and they're sitting there, so we would need more direction on what you want then.
I would just add that I would appreciate that we do away with that calendar, and if there's more visibility that could be had on the new website once it's up and running, I think we should explore that.
Well, I think what you're saying is the calendar on the website, right now the website has a calendar and there's stars, and what you're asking for is to not have the stars when there's a meeting of the quorum.
Do away with the calendar.
I guess I completely disagree with getting rid of the calendar. It's a tool in which we communicate when our meetings are for all of our residents. It could be planning and zoning, parks, any of our meetings are currently on that. And it's a good tool for our residents to know when they can be vocal and communicate with those of us that are in elected positions.
I think sometimes it gets, if it gets forgotten, then it gets used against us. That's what I don't like about the calendar being there.
Brian, can you explain to us how a calendar event is put on the website, please?
Dennis Olson typically puts things on the calendar.
Is it a very extensive process? Does it take an hour? Is it
I
simple?
don't have a clue.
Okay. So I'm getting very frustrated because residents reach out to me because they're concerned that we're not being transparent and having information out there. Because we can't hit a simple milestone of having a star show up on the front page of our website, it seems foolish for me to take away the entire calendar. This situation that we're in, it's, continues to be, a concern where residents are looking for the information and wanting to be vocal and talk to their council members. Maybe they're not reaching out to every council member, but they are to me. And when they do that, they're asking about, where's the council packet? I want to review it. Where's this? Where's that? And I just would really like to see clear expectations so that we can say specifically what the expectations are and then let the staff meet those expectations.
I know we talked about this at one of our work sessions about trying to get it on the first page. I mean, can we table this to when the new website comes out and figure out a way to do that despite calendar or no calendar, just so it's more simplified?
Yep, we can. As you know, we're redoing the webpage now. Not quite sure when that's going to happen, but we're trying to simplify things and make things a little easier for folks to get to.
And also for when we bring on our part-time person too. I mean, we should just table this until the website's done and our part-time person.
And if we want to table it, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we have a method in which we can hold our staff to that level that says this is what will be completed. Because if they're not hitting that milestone, I want to make sure that we have a measurable for that.
But our staff is meeting the requirements. they're doing what they're told, well, what's in the state law, they're doing it. I don't know what the question is.
Just one other thing I'd like to read, because we held a joint meeting with our school board, and I believe we're going to start doing those with the Sioux Falls Council. Yep, so just one thing that's in the statute says, it is not an official meeting of one political subdivision or public body of its members provide information or attend the official meeting of another political subdivision or public body for which the notice requirements of Section 1-25-1.1 have been met. I take that to mean if the school board initiates the meeting, it's up to them to post it, not the city of Brandon, likewise for the city of Sioux Falls.
The only thing is I'd caution, there is an Attorney General's decision out there that says if you have a quorum and you're discussing city business, there's a Attorney General position or decision out there where a county commission went to another meeting, somebody asked the commissioners a question like, do you support this? And all of a sudden it became a discussion of city or county business. So I think it's a prudent practice to at least post, so there's no question if somebody asks you a question, because it was just one council commissioner that was asked a question and all of a sudden it turned into your agency. So my caution would be when you meet with them to at least post that you're meeting with them. But it's not your meeting where you have to allow the public input for the city of Brandon if you're going to like the city of Sioux Falls meeting. I think it's still a prudent practice to post that you're going to join that meeting if there's a quorum.
I think we're at the point right now of tabling. Is that what I'm hearing? For a time? For a time?
Just for clarification, do we have an idea when the website will be able to be looked at, so we can have a better idea, so this doesn't get put off forever, that, you know, we can see what that visualization would look like once it's cleaned up?
They did some programming last week. I've had some communication with the programmer today, actually, so I'm going back and forth with her. So it's moving forward. I just have some things that will need to be tweaked with her, and it'll go on to the next step.
Moving on, item 12D, resolution 2518, moving contingency funds. Christina, please review that.
Yes. Getting towards the end of the year, just have some things we need to wrap up. We'll be transferring the $15,000 to professional services of council to for any engineering service that we're expecting yet for the end of the year. And then the council other is for Dakota Resources for strategic planning that we have done. We've gotten billed for $5,000, and I just got another bill today for $5,000, so I'm transferring $10,000. Of that $10,000, we do have donations that have come in for that of $5,300 so far, and then I have another amount, $2,000, that will be coming in for that. So a lot of that is being paid through donations on that $10,000.
I will need a motion to approve that ordinance and the moving of contingency funds.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is a transfer of funds, resolution 2618. Christina?
Yeah, this is another end of year wrap up. We're transferring funds from our STIP fund to our Holly project of $500,000 to cover the cost of what we've done so far in engineering on that. To the general fund, to the special assessment country club fund of $10,957.91 to cover the end of year on that. And then also from the general fund to the Northeast Lift special assessment of $3565.08, and that Northeast Lift is finalized and all bond obligations have been met, so that'll be closed out.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2618.
Motion and a second. Any questions for Christina? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we need to approve a bid for the construction of a small office in City Hall. The recommendation from the administration is to approve a bid from Shoneman Construction for $3,390, which is a little bit higher than the low bid, but the difference being that Shoneman has agreed to work nights and weekends rather than disruption during the day, so it was the intent of the administration that that would be very good, yes, very.
I would agree with the disturbance during the day being problematic. I've gone through several build-outs in my agency, and 2 of the 3 times it's been during the day, and it's super disruptive. So for the nominal difference between the 2, I would make a motion that we approve Shoneman's bid for the $3,390.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Shoneman Construction in the amount of $3,390 to construct an office, small office in the City Hall. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, Wage and Benefits Study. Wage Benefits Committee formation.
RFP for insurance broker. G. Oh, you don't have it on yours.
Working from the last agenda, I guess.
Good. RFP for insurance broker.
Yeah, I've got a draft RFP for agent broker of record for the employee benefit program. Take a look at it, fairly routine. If you look on page 68, we'd be looking at services to include group health, group dental, short-term disability, long-term disability, group life. Any other things to add there? Delete? And then otherwise, starting on page 69, we're looking at the scope and responsibilities from the agent that we would like them to perform. If there's any different ones or changes that you would like to see, let me know. I'll add some background information on the city and the group. And then the required contents of the proposal on page 75. You know, some history of the firm, their qualifications, certainly a list of references, any conflicts of interest that they may have, any work that they've done for us in the past, and then, of course, fees. And then just compliance with errors and omissions, business licensing, et cetera. So if there's anything else you would like to see in the qualifications or what you want to take a look at, let me know. I can draft those in or add those in to the draft.
Sorry, Brian, under the firms may choose to be considered for any one of the following, would vision insurance be in there too, or is that under health?
No, that's typically a separate item.
Should we add that in there? Because if we're looking out for it, might as well.
You looking for a motion, Brian, to approve the RFP?
No, I've still got to make a couple of tweaks here, so it's not completed yet. I was just looking for input for the final draft.
Okay. Any other? Moving on, the committee for wage and benefits study. My notes that the applications are due from the public on December 28th.
Correct.
And it's in your intent to appoint or get the process going with the appointment by the first meeting in January.
That's the plan.
Anything further?
Just clarification, who's going to approve those recommendations? Is it the council, mayor?
Typically, the mayor makes the appointments with confirmation by the council. That's typically what we've done.
Yeah, I'd like to have some discussion on it later in terms of what we're doing with some of the legalities, get some direction, but
In exec.
yeah, in executive session, not to further talk about now.
Anything further? A revised pay scale was presented to you in your board packet. Any questions, comments on that? It's continuing to be worked on, placing of the current employees on that scale.
Correct. Page 78 is the philosophy that Julie and Dan have been using to formulate the pay scale. And then on page 79 is just kind of at least the first draft showing 20 grades, minimum wage, and then the maximum for each of those grades.
So to kind of clarify, this doesn't necessarily mean that we're changing pay per se. We're trying to consolidate down from 12 pages of you're this number, 28, sorry. It's a lot. So this is trying to simplify that into a system that is more easily understood by both the council and staff. And it's not going to necessarily impact pay per se, right?
No.
I mean, there might be some small tweaks
As we
get into slots.
As you try to fit existing employees into a new system, there are some outliers, as Julie explains it, but we certainly try to fit those folks into the closest pay step that their current rate without going backwards. So some of those might be a very small adjustment, some of them might be a little bit larger. But this is the first draft based upon those philosophies on page 78.
When we get closer to a final draft, could we meet again as the personnel committee and have the discussion about whether we really want to wait on the ones that have been identified as being underpaid? I don't know that it's necessarily a full consensus at this point to wait 6 more months to address that piece.
No, what we talked about was, as we get closer to a more final structure, we'll meet with personnel.
And again, just for clarification, there are some folks that fall below the wage study, and it's our intention to bring those people up to at least, where they should be intended to be. And so instead of us, wait, we'd like to do that sooner than later for those folks that are below that identified pay scale, so.
Okay, and then, yes, if that's the desire of the committee, then they'll bring it forth to the entire council, and we'll go from there. Any other questions? Comments? Street committee report, first reading of ordinance 574, clearing ice from the sidewalks. Remember, Brian, it's just adding ice to the terminology snow and ice.
Correct. Added the language, free from snow and ice, keep such sidewalk free from snow and ice, and then where, however, it is impossible to keep the sidewalk clear due to frozen conditions, then said owner or occupant shall sprinkle or spread some suitable material on the sidewalk to prevent it from becoming dangerous to travel. And then we, of course, have the authority to go in and do that for them and then bill them back for said costs.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I just want to say thank you for doing this. It was me that asked for this to be on here after a resident had questioned me about it. They saw a young teenager take a pretty bad wipeout several days after our last ice storm and asked me about the ordinance. When I looked it up, I saw that it was just pertaining to snow, but our violation placards that go on the door actually have ice as an option. So this is a good cleanup to make that match. So I'll make a motion that we move forward with this.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve first reading of ordinance 574. Any further discussion?
So I just want to clarify, so the intent is that if someone puts sand or salt down there meeting the requirements, even if the ice is not fully removed? That's how I read it. I just want to make sure that that's correct.
That's the issue with ice. Snow's pretty easy.
Right.
Once it's done accumulating, you got to get it off there. With ice, it can come and go, and as long as you're adding something to it to give it some traction, you should be good.
Anything further? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ordinance 575, clear water connections. Brian.
Go ahead.
This is pertaining to the, I believe, to the sump pump connections of City of Sioux Falls. With our agreement, they're okay with us having that in there and having the permit, but I was under the understanding there's some language that might need to be changed on it. Am I correct?
Well, we were looking at doing this in connection with revising all the sewer ordinances, which got tabled. The sewer ordinances are what authorize this, so if we're not going to have the first reading of the sewer ordinances, then there's no sense in doing this because we don't have the ability to do this yet. So,
But it was kind of dealing with that permit that we kind of came up with, basically for the sump pumps over the winter months and stuff like that. So trying to set a fee, and I believe there was already a penalty fee established in the existing ordinance, so.
so my recommendation would be to table it until we do the first reading of the sewer ordinances that got removed from the agenda.
Okay, we'll table first reading of ordinance 575. Sidewalk agreement for Lot 4, Block 5 of Stone Ridge Estates.
These are two lots on east or west Redwood, heading out to the gravelled portion west of Stone Ridge. The sidewalks wouldn't go anywhere, so the property owners have asked us if we would not require those sidewalks to be built now, but they would be required to be built at a later date at the city's discretion.
So what happens if we do that and then down the road they sell the house? Does that have to be disclosed to the new homeowner?
Well, it runs with the land.
Goes with the land?
Yep, it runs with the land, so, you know, it would be up to the seller to disclose that agreement on their disclosure form.
This gets
But-
filed
okay.
with the Register of Deeds, so when the company does the title search, they'll see.
Can I have a motion?
You want to do both of
Can
them
we
at
do
once?
both of them?
Yes.
4 and 5? I'll second them.
Motion is second, discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item, we have a bid opening on what's referred to as the Redwood project. I believe it's a
Storm sewer.
storm sewer inlet on the corner of 9th
Redwood
Street
and Ninth.
in Redwood.
Yep.
Low bid is $264,494 from First Rate Excavating.
Correct.
I can have a motion to approve that bid.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. No updates on safety on Holly crosswalks, I understand? Okay. Water and Sewer Committee. Tower and water line agreement with WAPA. Any comments, Brian, on that?
No.
Come on.
It's lava.
I think we had something that was still getting worked out the last we heard on Thursday. Wasn't there something about that
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna approve it. I don't
we're
think it's
good
a
as
huge-
written?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to approve that agreement?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of ordinance 577, wastewater revisions.
I'm going to ask that we do a work session on this. There's just a lot to take in here. I sent in my 3 or 4 pages of notes and questions, and I got some feedback back from Tammy. I think you're in agreement that we have some work to do on this yet?
I am, yep.
Okay.
Any opposition to that?
When would you like to have it?
Yeah, middle of January.
Well, urgency in the sense the department of Natural Resources and that who's been on the city of Sioux Falls to get this done, and we've spent about a year and a half at the city of Sioux Falls back and forth on this. Raleigh's looked at it, the Sioux Falls City engineering staffs have looked at it, the Sioux Falls City attorneys looked at it, Tammy had already looked at it and cleared it, Brian had cleared it, so and Dan, I appreciate your comments, I looked through them all, and I don't really think there are that many things. I think I have one or two little things, I think everything else is already kind of taken care of, so I don't think it's going to take very long, unless other council members have comments, but I don't think it's going to be a very long work session discussion about them. And most of this is driven by the city of Sioux Falls. We're required to put these in place by our sewer agreement with them. So there's not a lot more that we can do with them. So I don't think it'll be a very long work session in terms of when you want to do this.
Well, how many items are we talking about we have to go over?
Well, and Dana, I could probably just sit down with you and go over your questions if you want to do that. If everybody wants to be involved, we certainly can. But there's really, from my perspective, and Tammy and I talked about this as well, I don't know that there's that many items.
I guess, Tammy, can I ask your opinion? Because I had sent these to Tammy, and she sent them back to me, red lined here, and it seemed to me like we still have a lot to do. Can I ask your opinion?
Yeah. You know, I saw it last Tuesday. I kind of went through it, put out some of my comments to Lisa. Lisa went through them, added in her comments. As going through this, it very much lists out what the city engineer is responsible for. And before I'm held accountable for all of this, I want to make sure that we have these processes, or at least a plan to implement these processes. So I know Lisa's put in a lot of work. I know it's been over a year. We need to get it passed. I can put it at the top of my priority, but I would like a couple extra weeks at least to kind of go through it and talk with city staff.
Well, and I think what Tammy's talking about is getting a list of what her responsibilities are and defining what's Raleigh's going to do with respect to his responsibilities, what's Brian's responsibilities, and what's Tammy's responsibilities within the ordinances, which is kind of different than the ordinances. So, I mean, I do think we can work this out pretty quickly. So, and I don't think it's going to take a lot of time on the council's part to have a long work session is what I'm trying to convey.
Is there a water and sewer committee on this council?
Just the liaison, Tim.
Oh, we don't have an actual committee.
Yeah, each council member is a liaison to a department in the city.
Understood.
You know, looking at the 2019 calendar, we've got our first council meeting on the 7th. And then if you wanted to, we could have a work session, I would think maybe an hour on either that Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, 8th, 9th, or 10th.
Just going to have to send it out and see what kind of response you
will.
get. That's probably all we can do.
I guess I'm kind of struggling with this. We're a legislative body. We're not in the weeds body. And if Lisa's reviewed it, City of Sioux Falls has reviewed it, Brian's reviewed it, Raleigh, what am I going to add? I'm sorry, but I got nothing. So I understand Tammy's concerns, and I think that can be worked out. I'm happy to come to a work session, but I think we get too much into some of this stuff. It's way over my head.
And I agree the same. I don't even know if I'd come to the work session because you guys have already done it all. And yeah, I think it's, you know, her concerns need to go to Lisa or Tammy, not to all of us. Because we worked long and hard to get that contract with Sioux Falls and to work with them. And if they've agreed upon it all, yeah, count me out.
I hear what you guys are saying, but we also have an obligation if we're going to put something into law that we do the due diligence to understand it. And I mean, there's times in here where we don't have, our city engineer is not involved when there are connections being made. There are times where the verbiage of manager, who also is listed as the City of Sioux Falls wastewater guy, as having the ability to come in and talk to a homeowner about his water coming off his house on his downspouts. We literally have in the law that it's somebody's opinion, literally the word opinion, for interceptors. So whether or not a restaurant or a gas station or car wash needs an interception is based off of the opinion of the manager right now. There's some things that definitely need changed in here. I don't agree that they're just a couple quick tweaks. I don't think Tammy does either, and I rely heavily on her expertise as an engineer, and I see her over there agreeing.
Could I suggest maybe that, Dana, you just meet with Lisa in the next couple days or whatever and see if you can get those resolved? And if you do, I'm trusting that we can move forward.
Again, expertise on this stuff to me is Tammy. So if the three of us can get together, I'd be totally game for that.
I'd be happy to sit in as well.
Exactly, go for it.
And bless you.
So for clarification, then, we're thinking that first reading and then would be our first council meeting in 2019 then? Okay.
Okay, I think it's consensus to get parties together, Tammy, Lisa, Tim, Dana, with concerns or questions, and not have a full work session on that. So in the words of some of the other council members, go for it.
Absolutely. Have at it.
We're at the end of our agenda. I need a motion to go into executive
No, we
session.
still got two more. We got DOT and we got grease trap inspection.
The DOT agreement's over the Holly project. It's just stating what the state's paying for versus the federal's paying and what we're paying and what E&E's paying.
Do we need a motion?
I'd move we approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the South Dakota DOT agreement for the Holly project. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we are at the end of our agenda. There's no update on grease trap. Need a motion to go into executive session for personnel item? And just hold on, here guys. And potential litigation? Okay.
Who made the motion?
It's at 7:36.
Do I see coffee back there? I saw the chief get some. I'm like, what the heck?
It has nothing to do with, we don't need you for personnel, it has nothing to do with anybody else. Okay. You're responsible for. I'm pretty open.